One of the questions I get asked most of the time is, what was it like to go to Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Clown College? As you may or may not know, Clown College started in 1968 and it ceased in the 90s. I think it was 96 or it might have been 98. I was class of 1987, which is a long time ago. So Clown College was started back in 1968 by Irvin Feld. It was Irvin Feld's idea along with Bill Valentine. One of the reasons that they actually started it was the art of clowning was dying back then. All the clowns that were on the Ringling circus were pretty old. They were 50 years old or older, and there was no young blood coming in. So they decided, okay, well, we'll just train people for the circus and we'll have a constant supply of new clowns coming along. And that's what they did. I wanted to go, I'd heard about the school, and so it was kind of like, oh, well, there's this clown school, it's really hard to get into. So they sent me the application. I think it was like a 5 or 6 page application. I didn't audition. Most of my class actually did go to auditions and were picked from auditions. I just filled out the application and sent photos, and I guess they thought I looked like a clown. Huh. I remember filling out the application and, I was moving around a lot. And so I kept using whiteout to white out my answers because I wouldn't like what I had written. And I shouldn't have done it in pen probably, but so I used a lot of whiteout. And when they called and told me that I was accepted, they actually asked about that and said they'd never seen an application that had so much whiteout. I think he thought I might have been doing something duplicitous or something. But no, it really was that. It was like, I don't like that answer. I'm going to change it. And so, that's what I did. It was July or August of 1987 that we started. And there was 50 people. They only accepted about 50 people a year. We all showed up. We all stayed at the Venice Villas in Venice, Florida, which is a motel there.
Boom. Sean's back in jail again for parole violations.
Can you believe he did that?
And he had such a nice cell, too.
Above ground tennis courts.
A t-shirt I saw back in Chicago, it said beer, and it had this giant black bear with antlers, like a deer. It said beer? Big question mark. Tickets, please. Tickets.
All the rooms are taken. There he is, the last man.
Would you like a program? Can't tell the players about the programs.
You're the last man. Oh, no, we're not going to get it.
This must be my roommate if he's the last one.
No, he's his roommate.
He's his roommate. Well,
The last roommate.
the last roommate. I thought that was like the last tango.
It had a reputation as being circus boot camp. They didn't coddle you at all. I think a lot of people nowadays just wouldn't even be able to handle going in the first place just because of the lack of coddling. They just would essentially throw you into stuff. They didn't really care if you didn't want to do it. It was made clear to us that we were expected to do and try everything, even if we were afraid. I was afraid of a lot of stuff, and we had so many different types of classes, and a lot of them were very physical. We had a sort of a stunt class, learning how to do stunt falls, and that one really intimidated me because every single day it was very different, and it was taught by Frosty Little and Chuck Sidlow, and so they just would throw this stuff at you, and it would be like, okay, climb up to the top of this ladder and tip the ladder over with you on it and then do a flip at the bottom. If you were afraid of doing it, you had to do it anyways. And so I think in this day of people being absolutely mortified and offended by everything and expecting everything to go their way all the time, that just wasn't how it was. And if you didn't participate, if you didn't want to do it, they pretty much would have asked you to leave. I'm pretty sure of that. I'd heard about people in the past. There was a couple times when they almost asked students in our class to leave that they didn't feel like were hitting the mark, so to speak. But yeah, that's what it was. They wanted you to participate. They wanted you to do it then, like on the dot, Johnny on the spot. And they weren't going to take any kind of like, from anybody. And they didn't. That was intimidating. We had an 8:30 call, I believe, every single morning. So it was pretty much 12 hours, 12 to 15 hours every single day for 3 months. I think it was 8:30. It may have been 8 a.m. We would all get on a bus. This bus came and got us at the Venice Villas.
New York. stuff like that.
We'd go to the Ringling winter quarters. It was basically a giant old aircraft hangar. It was this huge, massive building. And so, yeah, this was in the middle of summer. It was very, very hot. We didn't have to be in makeup at first, but eventually, I think after about a month, we had makeup class, I believe, for about a month, at least 3 weeks. They told us all the different types of clown makeup. They taught us, you know, all the differences and the history of it.
Oh, you can talk.
Let's go.
Oh,
That's it.
in with us.
Aaron, I can't get you that close. If you'd like to do it, I don't mind, but I'd rather not waste film. Go ahead.
If you just look at the red and don't look at the black, you can see what I'm talking about when you have a mouth that goes up over your upper lip, how it doesn't move. It stays in one place. You know, that's why I suggest getting, you know, something like a cloth, just a regular washcloth or something, because you want to go ahead and just rub.
Once our makeups were approved, we were expected to show up in full makeup, and we had matching jumpsuits that we had to wear all the time if we were not in our outfits, in our agent suits. They made like these elaborate wardrobes for each of us. We had a whole props and costume department that would, you know, we would tell them what we want, and they would make our costumes. But we all wore these matching paint splatter jumpsuits, and we were supposed to go out. If we were in makeup, we were supposed to be in these jumpsuits at all times. If you got out at 8 o'clock one night and you decided to go grocery shopping and you didn't want to remove your makeup, you were expected to wear the jumpsuit to basically stay in character at all times. You weren't allowed to walk around in street clothing with your makeup on. That was just a cardinal rule. And you would have actually gotten into a lot of trouble had you done that. They probably would have said you're being extremely disrespectful. We were also supposed to have clown underwear. Everything was very specific. You actually were supposed to have a specific pair of clown underwear that you wore all the time. We had multiple different types of classes. As I mentioned, we had stunt fall class. We had a class in gag structure, sketch structure. But with clowns, it's like you're trying to make visual gags. So it was like how to do gag structure. We had circus history. We had hat tricks, we had unicycling.
Look at this is good. And now comes forward. Back revolution. And stop.
We had juggling, we had improv, we had acrobatics. That was another class that I really didn't excel very well in, acrobatics. I had a very close friend at Clown College who was a natural acrobat named Steven, and he was absolutely amazing. They actually hired him at some point, and he toured Japan and was pretty much an acrobatic clown, but he was quite something. He'd never been taught. The acrobatics teacher would just be like, do this, and this, and Steven could just do it. He just would be like, oh, here I go, I'm gonna do it. I was also close with Laura and Peg, pretty close with my roommate Dan. You know, I think I drove him crazy at sometimes. You know, I was actually pretty frosty. I mean, as many of you know who watch my channel, I'm autistic, and I wasn't diagnosed with autism until I was much later in life. A lot of my personality problems stemmed, I believe, from the fact that I was autistic. Didn't understand why I was not more of a social person. I was pretty good, like, one-on-one. But like I just didn't want to go do the parties or whatever they were doing. If they were going to do something on the beach, like my classmates, I wouldn't want to go and do a beach party. And Daniel, from day one, was just like Mr. Circus, and he'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to go out and practice fire eating."
All the elements. Fire, water, sand.
Bad jokes.
Bouncing back.
Hot stuff.
Watch it.
Thanks, watch your butt.
and he'd be like putting kerosene in his mouth and, and doing fire eating. And I was always like, oh my gosh, if I put kerosene in my mouth, I'm gonna freaking swallow it, which I probably would have. I was pretty clumsy. I was terrible at choreography, and there were some things that I was good at, like balance. I guess if it kept it at a slow pace, I was pretty good at it. But once you started to be like, okay, turn this way, turn this way, turn this way, I was absolutely lost. And so we had several dance numbers in our final graduation show, and they'd hired this guy from Disney to come down and do choreography, and I was just a mess at it, an absolute mess. One of my classmates, Martha, was very kind and helped me learn some of the choreography, but I was still not very good at it. I have a Richard Simmons Sweatin' to the Oldies DVD that I must have done over 100 times, and I still screw up the choreography. It's just not something that stays in my mind, and I'm actually a trained dancer. Like before I went to clown college, I was doing a lot of ballet. And so I'm not a bad dancer. If I'm making up the steps myself, I am a pretty good dancer. For me to actually do it, it takes way, 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 way longer for me. So I would never have done very well auditioning for Broadway. I would have been one of those people trying out for chorus line that they would have been like, eh. It takes me longer to process things, and I'm a complete introvert still. I still have trouble with doing any kind of small talk. Like I said, I'm pretty good at it on a one-on-one basis, but if you put me into another situation like a gym or a church service or something like that, I'm a little bit like... So I love all my classmates, but I had a particularly adversarial relationship, I think, with a lot of the teachers. I seem to remember it very differently than a lot of my peers. And for them, clown college was definitely this pivotal moment in their life that changed everything for them. And it was a bit like that for me, but I didn't trust the teachers, and I think it's just because I didn't really understand exactly what was going on or the pressures that they probably were facing. And so when we would get yelled at, which often happened, I just always took it extremely personally. And so I actually remember being yelled at quite a bit. I remember stuff like that more than praise, which is weird because I don't think that other people will remember it like that.
I don't want to see anybody pull attitude. Because I'll yank you down real hard. We have to get along. We must work together. A lot of the things we're talking about are really very simple things.
It was definitely tough love, okay, looking back. If it was the wrong thing to do, if it sucked, they would tell you right out there in your face, in front of everybody. And it could be embarrassing. And in fact, the way that they chose people at the end who would get jobs with the circus is like they took them out of the room one at a time until only like a few people were left, and those were the ones that didn't get jobs, which was me. I was one of the ones that they didn't offer a job to. And it was very devastating at the time. But like I said, I think those kinds of things are very important, not to coddle people, because they're trying to teach you these skills that everything is not going to go your way all the time. Even though for years I thought, wow, that was really psychologically manipulative. But it's actually the school of hard knocks. They're just telling you, okay, if you want to be in this industry, you're going to get knocked down flat on your face. Many times, not everybody's going to go right out off the bat and be, as a clown, you're not going to walk in the door and become Lou Jacobs or Frosty Little or Emmett Kelly, whatever. So I think a lot of what they were doing was tough love. CBS came down and shot a TV show while we were there that had Dick Van Dyke in it. And I was never a big fan of the show once it came out. I know a lot of my classmates love it. It was just like a typical 80s thing. It was more of a puff piece for Dick Van Dyke, and it kind of focused on people that weren't even there. I think I would have liked it better if they'd done it like a reality show like they have nowadays. That I would have thought would have been really fascinating if they'd gone around and interviewed the students who were actually at clown college. The show was directed by Joe Layton. He had done a lot of specials with Barbra Streisand, and he'd done the musical sequences for Thoroughly Modern Millie, the movie, and Annie, and that one with Bette Midler for the boys. Anyways, but he directed this TV show for CBS. And what I remember most about that as well is him yelling all the time. There was this sort of small window where he was walking around meeting everybody, and he was very nice. And, the man was super talented. We had 500 clowns there, and we had to walk around this circle in the center ring, and they were shooting. And it was just super hot, and we were in full makeup and full costumes, and just, it seemed endless. And I think it seemed like it took 3 days. I think it did. Just shoot this one shot. And then when you see the show, it's just kind of like, that is what we did. I just remember yelling, like, that's just how it is. This sort of world that we live in now where everybody is, ah. My perspective is just kind of like, grow a pair after all. I don't know. Develop a thicker skin. We also had Lou Jacobs was one of our teachers. He's a very, very famous circus clown. He was there for about 2 weeks. He was the clown that was on the postage stamp. It was very easy to be intimidated by his fame. My favorite teacher there was Frosty Little, actually, because he was so extremely kind to me. After clown college was over, when I didn't get a job, I was kind of hanging out in the props room, and he was there, and he went out of his way to be super kind to me, to try to get me work with one of the shows. Like, he was going to try and get me work working in concessions, but just was so supportive and so kind. And it was this other side of him, because I'd been so intimidated by him and by Chuck Sidlow the whole time that I was in class with them. I was intimidated by, I think, all the teachers except for maybe Frank Farrell, who taught improv, who I absolutely loved his class. My favorite class was Circus History, which was taught by Bill Ballantyne, and he wrote Clown Alley, which is a very famous book. You should check that out if you don't know about it. It was a very interesting time. I was extremely mean one day to my friend Paige, my classmate Paige, in the dining hall. We called it the pie car. It wasn't a car, but it was, a place where we ate. And Paige was a Christian, and I just bit his head off to my shame. Totally picked on him because of his religious beliefs, and felt very bad about it. Me and Paige became friends, actually, but Paige died this year. There's things that you can never take back. There are things that you cannot take back that you just shouldn't say in the first place, and that was one of them. And he was just a very, very nice person. I was insecure. I was an agnostic. Now I do believe in God, and that's how that's how I became friends with him. There are just things that you can never take back. So, anyways, I was very, very difficult to get along with, and I think that's one of the reasons that they didn't offer me a job. And I've always said, and I mean this, I think that they were right not to offer me a job. In retrospect, it's what I think now. I think I totally would have been one of those irresponsible types of people that would have been in the middle of a season, and like, if I felt frustrated or something, I probably would have left. I probably would have walked off or something, just because that's the type of person I was back then. I really had a lack of focus. And again, like, they saw when I would do things like that, when I yelled at Paige, "You're just a religious hypocrite," and I was just really mean about it. And so they saw this side of me where I was not nice and where I was not getting along with people. And I was kind of like thinking, well, you put somebody like that on a train, they're not going to get along with people. And that, that's how they did. They traveled on trains, and you would have your little sleeper cars, and probably be like riding Amtrak, but you'd be seeing the same people all the time. And so I think they thought, okay, well, this person has no self-control. This person is, no matter how talented I was or wasn't, there you go. I think that they were correct. We had to sign a contract that basically said anything that we created became Ringling property, which is standard kind of thing. But yeah, one of my walk-around gags went on their show for about 2 years, and I was pretty proud of that. I was like, even though they didn't want me, they wanted my walk-around gag. If you guys have any questions, I'd be more than willing to answer them. And like I said, it was a really emotional experience. I love all my classmates. I love all the people that I met. I've certainly softened towards my teachers, and I hope that they have softened towards me, because, I'm a very flawed person. I'll be the first to admit it. Anyways, this was my video about going to clown college. Please subscribe if you like my content. Until the next time.